He was Brazil's last hope to end a 24-year wait. Instead, an injury before the tournament even began turned his final World Cup into a ghost story. Glimpses of the old Neymar, but never enough. Welcome to Flop Files.
Look, we aren't just breaking down a football match today. We're really unpacking the cinematic tragedy of a generational talent. A player whose body just flat out gave out right as he reached the finish line.
To truly grasp the gravity of how this story ends, we kind of have to transport ourselves back to where it all started. The stage was set for a classic hero's journey, filled with immense promise and this overwhelming sense of absolute destiny.
His rapid ascension was just undeniable. Picture this. After being controversially overlooked for the 2010 World Cup squad by Coach Dunga, a teenage Neymar makes his senior debut at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey later that same year. And of course, he scores. Instantly, he establishes himself as Brazil's most talented generational player. We see him capturing Olympic silver in 2012, making his highly anticipated World Cup debut on home soil in 2014, and leading Brazil to a historic Olympic gold in Rio in 2016. He was absolutely the undisputed talisman.
But honestly, the sheer monumental weight of his legacy, it can be summed up by a single number: 80. Throughout this crazy journey, he amassed 80 goals for the Brazilian national team across 130 appearances. With that 80th goal, he broke a record that had been held by the legendary Pelé since the 1960s. It's an extraordinary stat, one that completely cemented his status as an absolute icon. But, beyond all the dazzling statistics and shiny Olympic medals lies a much darker narrative. The middle act of his career was defined not just by brilliance, but by constant, agonizing physical setbacks that continually derailed Brazil's ultimate ambition. These devastating moments just kept stacking up against him. The heartbreak started early when he was left out in 2010. Then, the trauma of 2014, a fractured vertebra against Colombia, ended his tournament prematurely, forcing him to watch helplessly as his team suffered that infamous 7-1 semifinal humiliation against Germany. That moment fractured way more than just a bone. It really seemed to alter his trajectory. The years that followed were a grueling cycle of torn ACLs and chronic ankle issues, chipping away at his absolute prime. Which brings us to the ultimate question that was on every fan's mind. The nation had been waiting 24 long years for their sixth star. Could the 2026 tournament in North America finally be his big redemption arc? Brazil waited for their savior, but unfortunately, a familiar enemy arrived first, casting a massive, dark shadow over his final campaign. And this is where we hit the brutal irony of the 2026 World Cup. It was meant to be this glorious farewell tour, but instead it became a heartbreaking illustration of a body betraying its master right at the edge of glory. Just weeks, literally weeks, before the tournament, playing for his club, he suffers another devastating calf injury. Now, this wasn't just a minor setback. It was an injury that kept him out of Brazil's critical opening matches. While the entire nation held its breath and waited for their star, he was reduced to a phantom figure on the sidelines. His World Cup turned into a ghost story before he even touched the pitch. The desperation surrounding his inclusion was palpable. He had really struggled for fitness, and manager Carlo Ancelotti initially had some serious reservations about bringing him. But former players and teammates rallied hard. Neymar himself made a tearful, viral plea that echoed across Brazil. "Hey Ancelotti, what about me?" Ultimately, the sheer respect he commanded meant Ancelotti brought him along, though perhaps more to preserve dressing room harmony than out of a real belief in his physical readiness. If you're enjoying this documentary, subscribe to Flop Files and share this video with a football fan. We uncover the stories behind football's greatest moments and biggest comebacks. So he's there, but his ghostly presence in the tournament was agonizing. He missed the opening matches entirely. He finally made a brief 15-minute cameo against Scotland to end a 981-day wait for a national appearance. He was left completely unused during a tense match against Japan. And then, the critical knockout match against Norway, he was brought on as a substitute in the 67th minute. This was a player held together by sheer willpower and a fragile calf, limited to agonizingly brief glimpses of magic. All of this tension built into the climax, the round of 16 match against Norway. It would unfold as one of the most disastrous knockout matches in modern Brazilian history, completely exposing deep tactical and psychological flaws.
The disaster started early. In the 14th minute, Brazil gets a penalty. Vinicius Jr., Brazil's in-form forward, had the ball. But, guided by coaching analytics that ranked players over a year, he handed it to Bruno Guimaraes. The pressure was immense. Guimaraes takes the stutter-step approach, and the 35-year-old Norwegian goalkeeper, Erjan Nyland, reads it perfectly, diving to his left to make the save. It was Brazil's first unsuccessful in-play World Cup penalty since 1986, and man, it completely shifted the momentum.
The tactical failure that followed was historic, 32%. That was Brazil's total possession in the match against Norway. Let that sink in for a second. According to the data, it was their lowest possession figure in a World Cup match since records began in 1966. They were totally disrupted by Norway's aggressive high press, losing their trademark composure and just failing to control the center of the pitch. The contrast between the two sides was staggering. On one hand, you had Norway's lethal efficiency. Erling Haaland, despite only touching the ball a dozen times, terrified the Brazilian defenders. He executed his role perfectly, scoring a brace in the 79th and 90th minutes. On the other hand, you had Brazil's disjointed attack. Without a traditional number 9 target man, their long passes were aimless, their running was poorly timed, and their defense just crumbled into panic every single time Haaland approached. Which brings us to the 90-plus 10th minute, the absolute depths of stoppage time. Brazil won another penalty, and this time Neymar took it. He rolled it past the goalie, scoring his final World Cup goal and joining Pelé in scoring across 4 tournaments. But it's a brutally ironic number. It was a totally meaningless flicker of the old magic, arriving way too late to change the outcome. The match ended 2-1. The final whistle blew and the harsh reality set in. This was Brazil's earliest World Cup exit since falling to Argentina all the way back in 1990. The emotional fallout was immediate and profound, as players stood stunned on the pitch, just watching Norway celebrate a historic quarterfinal berth. In the devastating aftermath, Neymar made his tearful, definitive announcement. "I tried and I tried. Now it's over." It was a stark, heartbreaking recognition from a player who had given absolutely everything to his nation, acknowledging that his body had finally given out. He was unable to carry the weight of that 6th star. Neymar's Brazil story ended exactly where it began, at MetLife Stadium, 16 years apart. In between, a record 80 goals, moments of pure magic, and a body that never let him finish what he started. As Brazil looks to a future without their savior, one has to wonder, will they ever find another player capable of carrying that immense weight? Or is the era of relying on one man truly over? Thanks for watching Flop Files.